Welcome back to HeadKanon Weekly, the show where I break down the week's news in as little time as possible. Let's dive right in. The gaming industry is collapsing in on itself. EA is to lay off around 670 employees. Electronic Arts has announced that it too is undergoing mass layoffs, with plans to let go of 5% of its total global staff, or roughly 670 individuals. CEO Andrew Wilson said the layoffs are a reaction to accelerating industry transformation where players' needs and motivations have changed significantly. Essentially saying that releasing unfinished titles and having aggressive monetization is no longer a viable business model, and we're punishing our workforce because of it. This was followed by the news of the Star Wars FPS title being cancelled. While moving into potentially original IPs is always a good thing, it feels really wrong to trade the livelihood of about 700 people in order to start doing so. It is uncertain if this means any of the other licensed IPs will be affected, but for right now, that's where EA is standing. Sony is also laying off roughly 900 PlayStation employees. Sony says it's laying off around 900 employees of its PlayStation division, a reduction of its global headcount of around 8%. Sony's layoffs will impact a variety of its PlayStation studios, including Insomniac Games, Naughty Dog, Guerrilla Games, and Firesprite. Sony's layoffs are the latest in a wave that has been impacting the gaming and tech industries throughout 2024. A quote from the article: "The layoffs come just days after Sony missed a PS5 sales target, which led to Sony's stock price plummeting by about $10 billion. While the PS5 outlook wasn't what Sony was expecting, analysts also pointed towards a near-decade low games margin, suggesting that the cost of making games is eating into Sony's gaming margins. Me and the guys have talked about this in the show before. Developing games is just way too expensive now, and it is not a sustainable business model for big companies to keep going for these God of War, Spider-Man 2 level games without any sort of secondary revenue stream that will support the industry while those big titles are getting developed." Me and the boys have talked about this on the podcast before. AAA gaming is just not sustainable in its current state. A lot of companies are putting all of their basket on big AAA titles like God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and while that's all great and good, it's getting to the point where it's eating away into the company's ability to support itself, thus leading into the layoffs. I think that we need to start shifting a little bit of the culture into small to mid-budget titles, kind of like we used to do in the early 2000s, to add another revenue stream to offset the cost of really high development costs for these AAA titles. I think that would be a smart move. I'm not an economist. If there's anybody out in the comments or watching this video that has any idea about how the gaming industry works financially, I would love to get in touch with you. I'd love to talk. I'd love to learn about it. And if you are willing to show up on a video and talk about it, I'd love to have you. I'm deeply sorry to anyone affected by the layoffs. It's weird seeing all of this happening after one of the most successful gaming years in recent history. Again, I wish I understood it more. If there are any experts out there willing to talk, please hit me up. On other news, Nintendo is coming after YUZU. The Switch emulator YUZU is being sued by Nintendo in the US federal court. Nintendo is asking for the shutdown of the YUZU emulator as well as reparations for hurt sales. This is a quote from the article. In the lawsuit spotted by Teef and Totilo, Nintendo alleges that YUZU violates the anti-circumvention and anti-trafficking provisions of the DMCA, as well as accusing the creators of copyright infringement. It alleges YUZU is primarily designed to circumvent several layers of Nintendo Switch encryption so its users can play copyrighted Nintendo games. They're essentially claiming that YUZU promotes piracy and has had a direct impact in Nintendo's sales. Nintendo's being pretty aggressive here. They're asking the court to force YUZU to take down the social media, domain name, and chat rooms URL, and hand over their main webpage to Nintendo and even seize its hard drives to help wipe the emulator off the internet. This is not particularly surprising to me. Earlier on in the month, Nintendo had a hard time with the Nintendo Switch cartridge that would allow you to essentially copy other games into it. Nintendo essentially wants to take down emulators, citing a lot of piracy. I remember not so long ago they were in the same or a similar battle with Dolphin emulator, the Wii U GameCube emulator. I don't predict that they're going to get everything that they're asking for. I don't know what the legality of the case is, but my guess is there's going to be a similar end to what happened to Dolphin, just not being able to monetize it or sell on bigger storefronts, but still existing in a sort of underground way. I'm not on Nintendo's side here. I do believe that emulation should be legal and that game preservation is a huge reason why emulation exists. I'm not a big fan of corporations coming in and trying to stifle accessibility to some of their other games in the name of preventing piracy and affecting game preservation later down the road. As we know, a lot of the Nintendo eShops are now closed down, and there's no way to get those games unless it is with piracy. So, by all means, Yuzu, keep doing your thing. I hope you walk out of this. More positive news, Toys for Bob's and Saber Interactive are going indie. You may know Toys for Bob as the developers of Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. They just put out an announcement that they're spinning off to an independent game dev studio and are in potential talks to partner with Microsoft for one of their games that is in the early development stages. This is a quote from the article. With the same enthusiasm and passion, we believe that now is the time to take the studio and our future games to the next level. This opportunity allows us to return to our roots for being a small and nimble studio. Same goes for Saber, developer of the Star Wars Sign of the Old Republic remake. The company is being sold to a private investor from Embracer's portfolio, as Embracer is looking to cut costs after the recent spending spree, a move which netted them about 27 companies in 2020, Saber being one of them. It's reported that they will keep working on their Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake, and there hasn't been any details on who's buying them. The person buying them has elected to stay anonymous. Dune 2 came out, making $7.6 million overseas on its opening weekend. It'll follow in North America this Friday, or sometime in the past on your timeline. It's expected to have an opening weekend worth $150 million to $175 million, but expectations, according to the general box office market, recently puts the actual number close to $140 million. It'll probably make enough money to be called successful throughout its theatrical run. Just be careful whose bucket you eat out of. That's about it. This has been HK Weekly. Here's a little recap for you. Capitalism is ruining the gaming industry, so make sure to support your indies and encourage smaller teams working on smaller games that are actually financially viable. Somebody should get Jeff Keighley on the phone and see what he has to say about this. Oh, he's busy advertising GameSend on Twitter. Well, at least your rooms will smell like gunpowder, Mountain Dew, and stale chips. Bye!